The Rithani homeworld burned beneath a sky filled with enemy ships. Ambassador Vareth Kalm stood before the Galactic Alliance Council, his forearms spread wide in desperate pleading. His gray skin had turned pale with fear, and his voice cracked as he spoke. "Please," he begged. "The Dominion fleet number is in the hundreds. We have 40 ships left. 40. My people will be dead within days if you do not send help." The council chamber fell silent. Representatives from 12 species sat in their floating chairs, but none would meet the ambassador's eyes. Council Speaker Dran Ovis, a tall being with blue scales and no expression, finally spoke. "Ambassador Kalm, we understand your pain. But the Alliance cannot spare ships. The Dominion attacks on all fronts. Every species fights for survival. We have nothing to give." Voreth Kalm felt his heart sink. He had known this answer was coming, but hearing it made the truth real. His people would die, his world would fall, and the galaxy would do nothing. "Then we die alone," he whispered Dot from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. A voice spoke. It was old and tired, but it carried across the room like a bell. "There is one more option." Everyone turned. Elder Priestess Muriel stepped forward. She was Silurian, her body wrapped in ceremonial robes that hid most of her wrinkled form. She was over 2,000 years old, one of the last beings alive who remembered the galaxy before the Dominion rose. "The humans," she said. Laughter erupted from several council members. Speaker Dranovis raised a hand for silence, but his own mouth twisted with doubt. "Elder Mirali speak of children's stories. Humans are legends, fairy tales told to make younglings feel safe. They do not exist." "They existed," the old priestess said firmly. 3,000 years ago, I was young. I saw them with my own eyes. They walked among us. They fought beside us. And when they left, they promised to return if we ever truly needed them. Then where are they?" A council member demanded. "Where have they been while the Dominion conquered half the galaxy?" Muriel closed her eyes. "They retreated to their home system, a place they call Earth. They sealed their borders and spoke to no one. But the old communication codes still exist. The ancient frequencies. If someone calls, they might answer." Voreth Kalm grabbed onto this hope like a drowning man grabs a rope. "How do we call them? Tell me how." The council erupted in argument. Half called the idea foolish. Others said it was worth trying. Speaker Dranovis silenced them all with a wave of his hand. "We will not stop you from trying, Ambassador. But do not expect miracles. Even if humans once existed, they are gone now. The universe belongs to those who fight for it." Voreth Kalm did not wait for more debate. He left the chamber and contacted his homeworld immediately. He spoke with General Keth Vorin, the commander of their remaining fleet. "General, I have failed. The Alliance sends no help." On the screen, Keth Vorin nodded slowly. He was old for a soldier, his gray skin marked with scars from 100 battles. "I expected nothing more. We will fight alone. There may be one chance," Voreth said. He explained what Elder Muriel had told him. The general was quiet for a long moment. "Humans. My grandmother told me stories of them when I was small. She said they were fierce but kind, strong but gentle. She said they protected the weak and punished the cruel. Do you believe the stories?" "I believe my grandmother never lied to me." General Keth Vorin straightened his shoulders. "Send the signal. Use the ancient frequency. If there is even a small chance, we must take it." The signal was sent within the hour. It traveled across empty space, past dead stars and forgotten worlds, toward coordinates that had not been visited in 3,000 years. Meanwhile, the Dominion fleet moved closer. War Commander Zelos Tarn stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the Rithani world grow larger in his view screen. He was tall and thin, with skin the color of dried blood and eyes that held no mercy. Behind him, 200 warships followed in perfect formation. "How many defenders?" he asked. 43 ships, Commander. Mostly old models. Poor weapons. No chance. Zealous Tarn smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Good. Send them my terms. Surrender completely or watch their world burn. Give them 1 hour to decide. He did not expect them to surrender. He hoped they would fight. The Dominion had conquered so many worlds that the battles had become boring. He wanted to see the light leave their eyes as they realized no one was coming to save them. On the Rithani homeworld, billions of people looked up at the sky and prayed. Evacuation ships launched from every city, carrying children and the elderly to uncertain safety. General Keth gathered his captains for what he knew would be their final battle. "We cannot win," he told them honestly, "but we can make them pay for every meter of space they take. We can give our people time to run. We can die as warriors, not slaves." His captains nodded. They were afraid, but they were also proud. They would not go quietly far away, in a region of space that appeared on no modern maps. The ancient signal finally reached its destination. The USS Resolute was an old ship, built for exploration rather than war. It drifted through the darkness on a routine patrol, its crew of 200 going about their daily work. They had not seen combat in generations. They had almost forgotten what it meant to fight. Ensign Samantha Cole sat at the communication station, monitoring frequencies out of habit rather than expectation. She was 23 years old, fresh from the academy, eager to prove herself, but convinced nothing interesting would ever happen. Then her console beeped on. She frowned and checked the reading. The signal was weak, almost lost in the background noise of space. But it was there, and it was using a frequency that she had only seen in history books. "Captain," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Captain Carter, you need to see this." Captain Daniel Carter walked over from his command chair. He was 50 years old, with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen much but expected little. "What do you have, Ensign?" "It's a distress signal, sir." "But the frequency?" "It's over 3,000 years old. Someone out there is using the old Alliance emergency codes." Captain Carter stared at the screen. His expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time began to wake up. "Can you trace the source?" "Yes, sir. It's coming from the Rithani system. Whoever sent this, they're asking for help." Captain Carter stood very still for a long moment. Then he turned to his first officer, Lieutenant Commander Laura Bennett. "Contact Admiral Price. Tell him we've received a call. And tell him I think it's time we answered." The battle for the Rithani homeworld began at dawn. General Keth watched from his flagship as the Dominion fleet moved into attack formation. 200 enemy ships against his 43. The numbers told him everything he needed to know about how this would end. "All ships, hold the line," he ordered. "Protect the evacuation transports. Every second we buy is another life saved." The first Dominion weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. Green energy beams cut through the void, slamming into Rithani shields. The defending ships returned fire, their weapons weak compared to the enemy, but aimed with desperate precision. Within minutes, the first Rithani ship exploded. War Commander Zealous Tarn watched the battle from his command chair, a cup of warm drink in his hand. He was not worried. He was not even particularly interested. This was simply another world falling, another species learning that resistance was pointless. "Target the evacuation ships," he ordered casually. "I want the civilians to understand there is no escape." His officers obeyed without question. Dominion cruisers broke from the main formation and swept toward the fleeing transports. These were unarmed vessels filled with families, with children, with the old and the sick. General HFY saw what was happening and made a terrible choice. 3rd Squadron, protect those transports. 4th Squadron, cover them. Sir, that will leave gaps in our main line. I know. The general closed his eyes briefly. Do it anyway. Rithani warships moved to shield the evacuation vessels. They placed themselves between the Dominion weapons and the helpless civilians. They died doing so, one by one, their crews burning in the cold vacuum of space. But the transports escaped. Hundreds of thousands of lives, saved by the sacrifice of a few thousand far away. Aboard the USS Resolute, a different kind of debate was taking place. Admiral Nathan Price appeared on the main view screen. He was 65 years old, with white hair and a face carved by decades of responsibility. He had served in the human fleet for 40 years, but he had never fired a weapon in anger. None of them had. You're sure about this signal, Captain Carter? Yes, Admiral. It's genuine. Someone out there remembered us. Someone out there is asking for help. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Behind him, other officers could be seen moving, talking in hushed voices. This was the first contact with the outside galaxy in 3,000 years. Daniel, you know our history. You know why we left. I do, sir. We nearly destroyed ourselves. The Great Civil War killed billions of our own people. We retreated because we were ashamed, because we feared what we might become if we kept fighting. Captain Carter nodded slowly. I know all of this, Admiral. But I also know why we became warriors in the first place. It wasn't for conquest. It wasn't for glory. We fought because others couldn't. We protected the weak. Because it was right. And look where it got. U.S. Alone. Forgotten. The galaxy moved on. Without us. Then, maybe it's time we reminded them who we are. The Admiral stared at him through the screen. The silence stretched. Lieutenant Commander Laura Bennett stepped forward. Admiral, with respect, we've spent 3,000 years healing. We've spent 3,000 years becoming better. If we hide now, when someone calls for help, then what was the point? What did we learn? Chief Engineer Kevin Moore added his voice. Sir, the engines are old, but they'll get us there. The weapons haven't been fired in centuries, but they still work. We can do this. Admiral Price looked at each of them in turn. Then he looked down at his hands. I have 12 ships available, he said finally. 12 ships against whatever is out there. It's not much. It's enough, Captain Carter said. It has to be enough. The Admiral made his decision. Then go, Daniel. Take the fleet. Answer the call. And remind the galaxy what humanity stands for. The 12 human ships gathered in formation. They were not sleek or modern like the Dominion vessels. They were old designs, built in a different age, maintained with care across countless generations. But there was something about them that spoke of purpose. The USS Resolute took the lead. Alongside her flew the Endurance, the Vigilant, the Dawn's Light, and 8 others. 12 ships carrying fewer than 5,000 humans in total. All hands, this is Captain Carter. Daniel spoke into the fleet-wide channel. We've received a distress call from a species we've never met, from a world we've never seen. They're fighting for their lives against an enemy that wants to destroy them. They called for help, and we're the only ones who answered. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I won't lie to you. This will be dangerous. Many of us might not come back. But our ancestors made a promise to the galaxy 3,000 years ago. They said we would protect those who couldn't protect themselves. We said we would come when called. Today, we keep that promise. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. Back at the Rithani homeworld, the situation had grown desperate. General HFY's flagship had taken heavy damage. Fires burned in the lower decks. Half his weapons were offline. Of his original 43 ships, only 19 remained, and most of those were barely functional. "General, we can't hold much longer. We hold as long as we breathe." But even as he said it, Kethvorin knew the end was near. War Commander Zelos Tarn had grown tired of the game. "Enough," he announced. "All ships, finish this. I want the planet vulnerable within the hour." The Dominion fleet surged forward in a massive wave. The remaining Rithani ships formed a final defensive line, but they were too few, too damaged, too exhausted. General Kethvorin stood on his broken bridge and watched death approach. He thought of his children, hopefully safe on one of the evacuation ships. He thought of his world, its cities and fields and billions of people who had done nothing wrong except exist in the Dominion's path. He whispered a prayer to gods he had stopped believing in years ago. And then something appeared on his sensors. "General, we're detecting new contacts. 12 ships, unknown configuration, emerging from hyperspace." Kethvorin looked at the readings. The ship designs matched nothing in their database, but they matched something in his memory. Something from a very old story. "It can't be," he breathed. Across the battlefield, every sensor turned toward the new arrivals. 12 small ships against 200 giants. It seemed like a joke. Then a voice came across every frequency, cutting through the chaos of battle with perfect clarity. "This is Captain Daniel Carter of the United Earthship Resolute. We received your call. We are here to help." General Kethvorin felt tears forming in his eyes. The legends were true. The humans had come. Silence fell across the battlefield. For one long moment, no one fired. No one moved. Every ship, Dominion and Rithani alike, simply stared at the 12 vessels that had appeared from nowhere. On the Rithani flagship, General Kethvorin gripped his command console so tightly that his gray knuckles turned white. Around him, his surviving crew watched the sensor displays with wide eyes. "Humans," someone whispered. "The humans are real." On the planet below, Elder Priestess Miriel stood in her temple, watching the battle through ancient viewing crystals. When she saw the human ships arrive, she fell to her knees and wept. She had waited 2,000 years for this moment. She had kept the faith when everyone else had forgotten. "They came," she said softly. "They kept their promise." War Commander Zelos Tarn did not share in the wonder. He stood on his bridge, staring at the 12 small ships that had interrupted his conquest, and felt only confusion. "What are those vessels? Where did they come from?" "Unknown, Commander. The ships match no records in our database." "The species designation? They call themselves humans from a place called Earth. Humans?" Zelos Tarn had never heard the word before. "How many ships?" 12, Commander." The war commander laughed. It was a cold, cruel sound. 12? 12 ships come to challenge my fleet? They must be mad or stupid or both. He opened a communication channel. "Unknown vessels, this is War Commander Zelos Tarn of the Dominion. You have entered a war zone. Leave now, and I will let you live. Stay, and you will be destroyed along with these Rithani fools." The response came quickly. "War Commander, this is Captain Daniel Carter. We're not going anywhere. We suggest you withdraw your forces and leave this system immediately. This is your only warning." Zelos Tarn's eyes narrowed. He was not used to being threatened, especially not by someone commanding such a small force. "You are outnumbered 200 to 12. You cannot possibly win." "Maybe," Captain Carter replied. "But we came anyway. That should tell you something about us." The war commander ended the transmission with an angry gesture. "Destroy them. Destroy them all." 30 Dominion ships broke from the main fleet and moved toward the human vessels. Their weapons powered up, ready to erase these strange newcomers from existence. On the USS Resolute, Lieutenant Commander Laura Bennett watched the enemy approach. 30 ships incoming, Captain. They're targeting us with everything they have. Captain Carter remained calm. All ships, defensive formation Alpha. Let them come to us. And when they're close enough, show them who we are. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination. They had not fought a real battle in 3,000 years, but they had trained for this every single day. Their ancestors had passed down tactics, strategies, and lessons learned in blood. The Dominion ships opened fire. Green energy beams lanced through space, aiming to overwhelm the human shields through sheer volume. The human ships dodged. It sounds simple, but to the watching Rithani, it looked like magic. The 12 vessels moved in ways that seemed impossible. They twisted and rolled, slipping between enemy fire like water flowing around stones. Not a single shot hit them. How are they doing that? General Kethvaran demanded. His tactical officer had no answer. They're pilots. They're anticipating the enemy's targeting patterns. They're predicting where the shots will go before they're even fired. Captain Carter smiled grimly. Now, all ships, engage. The human fleet attacked. They did not move in a straight line like the Dominion expected. They scattered in 12 different directions, each ship choosing its own targets, its own path, its own moment to strike. But somehow, they worked together perfectly. The USS Resolute dove toward 3 Dominion cruisers, its weapons blazing. The old human cannons were smaller than the enemy's, but they hit with devastating precision. Every shot found a weak point. Every blast tore through armor that should have been impenetrable. One Dominion cruiser lost its engine. Another lost its weapons array. The third simply exploded, its reactor core pierced by a single perfect shot. 3 ships down in 30 seconds. Across the battlefield, the other human vessels achieved similar results. The Endurance crippled 2 enemy ships with surgical strikes. The Vigilant drew fire from 6 attackers, dodged everything, and led them into a crossfire that destroyed 4 of them. The Dawn's light protected a damaged Rithani ship, destroying any Dominion vessel that came near. War Commander Zelos Tarn watched his sensors with growing disbelief. Report. What is happening? We've lost 18 ships, Commander. The humans have lost none. Impossible. But it wasn't impossible. It was happening right before his eyes. The 30 ships he had sent to destroy. The humans were reduced to 7 in less than 5 minutes. Those 7 turned and fled back to the main fleet, their crews screaming in panic. On the Rithani flagship, General Kethvaran watched in amazement. His crew had stopped fighting. They were simply watching the humans work. They move like nothing I've ever seen, his tactical officer said. It's like they were born for this. General Kethvaran remembered his grandmother's stories. She had said that humans were different from other species. They had evolved on a dangerous world where everything wanted to kill them. They had survived through cleverness, through cooperation, through a refusal to give up no matter the odds. He was seeing those stories come to life. Captain Carter opened the channel to the Rithani fleet. General Vorn, this is Captain Carter. How are you holding up? Kethvaran took a moment to find his voice. We are damaged, but still fighting. Captain, I don't know how to thank you. Thank us when this is over. For now, can your ships still move? Most of them, barely. Good. Stay behind us. We'll open a path through their fleet. When you see a gap, take your ships and protect the evacuation transports. Get your people to safety. We'll handle the Dominion. You can't fight 200 ships alone. We're not alone anymore, Captain Carter said. We have you. Now let's show these Dominion bullies what happens when they pick on the wrong galaxy. The human fleet reformed and began moving toward the heart of the enemy formation. 12 small ships against over 150 remaining Dominion vessels. Ensign Samantha Cole looked up from her console. "Captain, the Dominion commander is hailing us." "Put him through." War Commander Zelos Tarn's face appeared on the screen. For the first time, there was something other than arrogance in his eyes. There was fear. "What are you?" he demanded. Captain Carter leaned forward. "We're the ones who should have been here 3,000 years ago. We're the ones who forgot our duty. But we remember now. And we're going to make things right." He cut the transmission. "All ships," he ordered, "show them what humanity can do." The human fleet hit the Dominion formation like a storm. Captain Carter had ordered Omega Formation, an ancient human tactic designed for situations exactly like this one. The 12 ships spread apart, each one becoming its own small force, each one striking at different parts of the enemy fleet at the same time. The Dominion commanders could not adapt. They were used to enemies who fought in straight lines, who followed predictable patterns, who broke and ran when outnumbered. These humans did none of those things. The USS Resolute cut through the center of the enemy fleet, drawing fire from dozens of ships. Every weapon on the Dominion side turned toward her, trying to destroy the single vessel that dared to challenge them so directly. Shields at 60%. Lieutenant Commander Laura Bennett reported. 50. 40. Chief Moore, can you give me more power? Captain Carter asked from the engine room. Kevin Moore's voice came back strong, despite the chaos around him. "I can give you everything we have, Captain. This old girl wants to fight." The shields held. The Resolute twisted and rolled, absorbing some hits, dodging others, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Behind her, the Endurance and Vigilant followed in her wake, striking any enemy ship that tried to pursue. Ensign Samantha Cole monitored the enemy communications, her fingers flying across her console. "Captain, I'm intercepting Dominion transmissions. They're calling us. I think the translation is demons, or maybe ghosts. They're terrified." "Good," Captain Carter said. "Fear makes people make mistakes." He was right. The Dominion fleet was falling apart. Ships that should have been coordinating their attacks were instead firing wildly, hitting each other as often as they hit the humans. Captains were screaming at each other, arguing about what to do, how to fight an enemy that would not follow the rules. War Commander Zelos Tarn tried to restore order. "All ships, focus fire on the lead human vessel. Ignore the others. Destroy their captain, and the rest will fall." Every Dominion ship that could aim turned toward the USS Resolute. Over 100 weapons powered up, ready to unleash everything they had on a single target. Captain Carter saw the readings. He knew what was coming. All hands brace for impact. The enemy fired. The Resolute should have been destroyed. No ship could survive that much concentrated firepower. But at the last moment, 3 other human ships dove into the path of the incoming fire. The Vigilant, the Dawn's Light, and the Steadfast formed a wall in front of their flagship. They took the hits meant for the Resolute. Their shields flared and failed. Their hulls cracked and burned. But they held long enough. The Resolute emerged from behind her protectors, damaged but alive, and fired a single shot at the Dominion command ship. The shot punched through the enemy flagship shields like they weren't there. It hit the engine core. War Commander Zelos Tarn had just enough time to understand what was happening before his ship lost all power. "Their commander's ship is disabled," Ensign Cole reported. "Signal the fleet," Captain Carter ordered. "Tell the Dominion this is their last chance. Surrender or withdraw. Anyone who continues fighting will be destroyed." The response was immediate. Dominion ships began jumping to hyperspace, fleeing the battlefield as fast as their engines could carry them. Those who couldn't run raised white flags. The universal signal of surrender in less than an hour. The battle was over. The human fleet had lost no ships, though several were badly damaged. The Vigilant was barely holding together. The Dawn's Light had lost half her crew. But they had won. General Kethvaran brought his surviving ships alongside the human fleet. He had watched the entire battle in amazement. He had seen 12 ships defeat 200 through skill, courage, and a willingness to sacrifice for each other. "Captain Carter," he said over the communication channel, "I don't have words for what you've done today." "You don't need words, General. You needed help. We came. Why? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything." Captain Carter was quiet for a moment. In the background, his crew was putting out fires, treating wounded, celebrating their survival. Finally, he spoke. "A long time ago, humans forgot who we were supposed to be. We forgot that strength exists to protect, not to conquer. We forgot that the measure of a people isn't how much they can take, but how much they can give. Your distress call reminded us. You gave us a chance to be what we should have always been." General Kethvaran felt something wet on his face. He was crying. He, a soldier who had seen death and destruction across 100 battles, was crying like a child. "My grandmother told me stories about your kind," he said. "She said you were the guardians of the galaxy. She said you protected the weak and fought the cruel. I thought they were just stories." "Stories remember what history forgets," Captain Carter replied. "Your grandmother kept our memory alive. That's why we're here now." On the planet below, billions of Rithani looked up at the sky. The enemy ships were gone. The fires in orbit had stopped falling. They didn't understand what had happened, but they knew they were alive when they should have been dead. Word spread quickly. Humans, the ancient legends, the stories your grandparents told. They were real. They came when called. They fought for strangers. They won. Ambassador Vareth Kelm received the news on the Alliance Council station. He had been waiting, hoping, praying for any report from his homeworld. When he heard that humans had arrived and driven off the Dominion, he collapsed into his chair and laughed until he cried. Elder Priestess Mariel walked out of her temple and stood in the central square of the capital city. Thousands of people had gathered there, all looking at the sky, all whispering the same word. Humans. Humans came. The old priestess raised her arms and spoke in a voice that carried across the crowd. I told you. I told you for 2,000 years. They never abandoned us. They were waiting. Waiting for us to call. Waiting for us to need them. And when we called, they came. In orbit, War Commander Zelos Tarn sat in his disabled ship, surrounded by human marines who had boarded to take him prisoner. He stared at them with confusion and hatred. Who are you? He demanded. What are you? The marine in charge, a young woman with dark hair and kind eyes, looked at him with something like pity. We're humans. And you made a mistake. You attacked the world under our protection. I didn't know, Zelos Tarn spat. No one knows about humans. You're nothing. You're nobodies. The marine smiled. That's changing. Starting today. She led him away to a holding cell, leaving the war commander to consider how completely his world had just shifted. Captain Carter stood on the bridge of the Resolute and watched the Rithani ships begin rescue and recovery operations. The battle was over. The enemy was beaten. But he knew this was just the beginning. Captain, Ensign Cole said, Admiral Price is hailing us. Put him through. Admiral Price's face appeared on the screen. He looked older than he had a few hours ago, but there was something new in his eyes. Something like hope. You did it, Daniel. You actually did it. We did, sir. The Rithani are safe. The Dominion is retreating. And the galaxy knows we exist again. Yes, the Admiral said slowly. They certainly do. I've already received messages from a dozen systems. They want to know if the stories are true. They want to know if humans have really returned. Captain Carter looked out at the stars. 3,000 years of hiding was over. 3,000 years of shame and doubt and isolation. Humanity was back. What do we tell them, Admiral? Admiral Price smiled for the first time in decades. Tell them we're home. 3 days after the battle, Ambassador Vareth Kelm finally set foot on a human ship. He had asked permission to board the USS Resolute, and Captain Carter had agreed without hesitation. Now the ambassador stood in the docking bay, surrounded by beings he had believed were nothing more than ancient myths just 1 week ago. They looked so ordinary. That was the strangest part. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin, no claws or scales or natural weapons of any kind. They could have been mistaken for 100 other species across the galaxy. There was nothing about their appearance that suggested they could do what he had seen them do. Captain Carter stepped forward and offered his hand. Vareth Kelm had studied human customs before arriving, so he knew to take it and shake. Ambassador, welcome aboard. Captain, thank you for receiving me. Vareth Kelm looked around at the ship's interior. It was functional but worn, the walls marked by centuries of use. Your ship has seen much. She's older than anyone aboard her, Captain Carter said with affection. Built during a different age. But she still does her job. Like your people, perhaps. The captain smiled slightly. Perhaps. They walked through the corridors of the Resolute. Crew members nodded respectfully as they passed, but did not stop to stare. They were busy with repairs, with maintenance, with the 1,000 small tasks that kept the ship running. Life continued even after great events. I have questions, Vareth Kelm said. Many questions. My people, my government, the entire alliance. Everyone wants to know about humans. Who you are. Why you've disappeared. Why you came back. I'll answer what I can. They reached an observation deck. Through the large window, the Rathani homeworld hung in space, beautiful and wounded. Debris from the battle still floated in orbit, being slowly collected by salvage crews. Why did you leave? Vareth Kelm asked. The old records say humans were everywhere once. You helped build the Alliance. You protected worlds that couldn't protect themselves. Then one day, you were simply gone. Captain Carter was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. We had a war, he said finally. Not with an outside enemy. With ourselves. The Great Civil War, we call it. It lasted 200 years. By the end, we had killed over 8 billion of our own people. Vareth Kelm felt cold. 8 billion. He couldn't imagine such a number. We destroyed colonies. We burned worlds. We did things to each other that I can't even describe. The captain's voice was heavy with ancient shame. When it finally ended, we looked at ourselves and didn't recognize what we saw. We had become monsters. So we retreated. We sealed our borders. We swore never to spread our violence to the rest of the galaxy. You were afraid of yourselves. Yes, we were afraid that if we kept fighting, kept expanding, we would eventually hurt everyone else the way we had hurt ourselves. So we chose isolation. We chose to be forgotten. Vareth Kelm considered this. But you came when we called. Your signal reached us at an interesting time. We've been debating for centuries about whether to rejoin the galaxy. Some said we had healed enough. Others said we never would. The debate went around and around year after year, generation after generation. What changed? Captain Carter turned to face the ambassador directly. Your signal. A stranger from a world we'd never seen, calling for help using codes that were 3,000 years old. Calling for help because someone somewhere remembered that humans might answer. My grandmother, Vareth Kelm said softly. She told me stories when I was small. Grandmothers have a way of remembering what matters. The captain smiled. When we received your call, the debate ended. We realized that we hadn't been protecting the galaxy by hiding. We had been abandoning it. All those centuries of isolation, all those promises to stay safe. They meant nothing if we couldn't help when help was needed. So you came. So we came. 12 ships. 5,000 people. Against an enemy we knew nothing about. To save a world we'd never seen. Because that's what we should have been doing all along. The door opened behind them. Elder Priestess Muriel entered slowly, supported by General Keth Voren. She was very old, and the events of recent days had exhausted her. But she had insisted on making this journey. "Captain Carter," she said, her voice thin but clear, "I have waited 2,000 years to meet one of your kind." Captain Carter bowed respectfully. "Elder Muriel, I've heard about you. They say you're the one who kept our memory alive." Someone had to. She smiled, wrinkles deepening across her ancient face. "When I was young, a human saved my life. His ship was called the Guardian's Hand, and his name was Jonathan. He never told me his family name. He said it didn't matter. What mattered was that people helped each other." "Jonathan," the captain repeated. "I'll look for that name in our records. I would like that." The priestess reached out and touched his arm. "I told his story to my children, and they told their children, and so on for 100 generations. I made sure no one forgot. I made sure that when the time came, someone would know to call. You saved your entire world, Elder. Without that signal, we would never have known." "No," she shook her head firmly. "You saved us. I only reminded you of who you were supposed to be. Over the next few weeks, things changed rapidly. Admiral Nathan Price arrived with reinforcements, including the human colony ships that carried diplomats, historians, and scientists. They met with representatives from the Galactic Alliance and began the long process of reconnecting with a galaxy that had forgotten them. Council Speaker Dran Ovis traveled personally to meet with the human delegation. He had dismissed the stories of humans as fantasy. Now he stood before Admiral Price and struggled to find words. "We owe you an apology," the speaker said. "When Ambassador Keln asked for help, we said there was none to give. We were wrong." "You were afraid," Admiral Price replied. "Fear makes everyone act smaller than they are. We understand. We've been afraid for 3,000 years. And now? Now we're tired of being afraid. We're ready to be part of the galaxy again. If you'll have us." The Alliance voted unanimously to welcome humanity back. It wasn't even close. War Commander Zilas Tarn remained a prisoner, but he was treated well. The humans did not torture him or humiliate him. They simply held him while negotiations with the Dominion continued. Eventually, he would be exchanged for Rithani prisoners taken in earlier battles. Before he left, he asked to speak with Captain Carter one final time. "I still don't understand," Zilas Tarn said. "You had 12 ships. I had 200. By every measure, you should have lost. Numbers aren't everything. Then what? What makes humans different?" Captain Carter thought about the question. "We don't know how to give up," he said finally. "We tried for 3,000 years. We tried to quit, to hide, to forget what we were capable of. It didn't work. The moment someone needed help, we remembered. That's weakness," Zilas Tarn insisted. "Caring about strangers. Risking everything for people who mean nothing to you. Maybe, or maybe it's the only kind of strength that matters." On the Rithani homeworld, life slowly returned to normal. The cities rebuilt. The wounded healed. Children played in the streets again. But the stories had changed. Parents no longer told their children about humans as distant legends from long ago. They told them about humans as friends who came when called. They told them about Captain Carter and the USS Resolute. They told them about 12 ships that held against 200. And they told them that somewhere out there, among the stars, were people who would fight for strangers. People who would never stop coming, no matter the odds. In the temple, at the heart of the capital city, Elder Priestess Miriel added a new chapter to the ancient records. Her hands were tired, and her eyes were failing, but she wrote carefully and clearly. "The humans have returned," she wrote. "They are no longer legends. They are allies, our friends, our protectors. And as long as we remember them, they will never leave us again." She set down her pen and looked up at the stars through the temple window. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling the borders of Alliance space. Somewhere out there, Captain Carter was watching over worlds that had once been forgotten. The galaxy had spent 3,000 years without humanity. That time was over. The Guardians had come home.